What's up, everyone? It's Bones here. I'd like to begin this video by giving a huge shout out to TCG Player for the opportunity to be a part of their affiliate program. If you want to help a content creator out, all you have to do is click on the TCG Player link down below, and it won't cost you anything either. For all the gearheads and tech heads out there, Legacy of Destruction brings support for an archetype about as old as the original iPod, or like where crypto was in 2012. In this stage of development, it seems like we've hit the iPhone 6, though compared to Snake Eyes, it might look like an iPod Nano. With these new Ancient Gear cards, the deck feels much more modernized than before, though the absence of Ancient Gear statue and better going first extra deck options is very much felt. So for this first combo, we're going to start with just Ancient Gear Wyvern, and if you don't know what it does, the important effect here is that if this card is normal or special summoned, you can add one Ancient Gear card from your deck to your hand. So this is a really good standalone card for the archetype, and we're going to add ourselves our first new card, Ancient Gear Advance. It's a continuous spell that reads, when this card is activated, add one Ancient Gear spell trap from your deck to your hand, except Advance. Once per turn, you contribute one monster, draw one card, and if you do, for the rest of this turn, you can normal summon level 5 or higher monsters that are Ancient Gear Golem or mention it without tributing. You can only activate one Ancient Gear Advance per turn, and you cannot set cards the turn you activate this card, which is perfectly fine because we won't be setting cards anyways. This is a really good card, and the tribute for the draw effect is really handy, as you'll see momentarily, but we're going to start here by activating the Advance. We'll get ourselves the Catapult, and the Catapult is another cool card. It's a relatively old one as well. Basically, while you control no monsters, target one face-up card you control, destroy it, and if you do, special summon one Ancient Gear monster from your deck, ignoring its summoning condition. That's the important effect that we'll be using here, and we're going to end up using the tribute effect of Advance for the draw, getting ourselves a random card, activate the Catapult, now we can pop the Advance, and from here we'll be able to special summon out our next new card, Ancient Gear Dark Golem, a level 8 that reads, this card's name becomes Ancient Gear Golem while on the field or in the graveyard. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can activate this effect. You cannot set cards for the rest of this turn. Also, add up to 2 Ancient Gear cards and or Gear Town from your deck to your hand, except Dark Golem. Then discard one card. You can only use this effect of Dark Golem once per turn. If this card attacks, your opponent cannot activate spell traps until the end of the damage step, and that's kind of a recurring thing with the bigger Ancient Gear monsters, but we're going to continue here by using the effect in order to search ourselves cards and then discard one, as we're going to get ourselves the Ancient Gear Fusion along with the Ancient Gear Duel. And this is a new trap card that reads, monsters you control that are Ancient Gear Golem or mention it are unaffected by your opponent's activated monster effect. If your opponent controls a monster, you can fusion summon one fusion monster from your extra deck that mentions Ancient Gear Golem by banishing materials mentioned on it from your field and or graveyard, including Ancient Gear Golem you control. And if you do, it can make up to 3 attacks during each battle phase. You can only use this effect of Ancient Gear Duel once per turn. Now, naturally, you will be picking to go second with this deck, but I wanted to do a bunch of going first combos for it since there isn't a whole ton of those, and really what you can do when you're going second is just make what I show you much stronger because of the additional effects that you'll be able to gain from your opponent controlling cards and stuff. But the really cool thing about this is how we're able to get into the fusion, and the Ancient Gear Duel has the monsters you control that are Ancient Gear Golem or mention it are unaffected by your opponent's activated monster effects. And this is pretty big, as you'll see momentarily, as we're going to end up discarding the random card that we drew. We'll then activate the Ancient Gear Fusion, and now we're going to go all in, going for 4 monsters to make the Chaos Giant. The reason that we're doing this is because we can then activate Ancient Gear Duel with one of our next new cards, the Ancient Gear Commander, and this one reads, you can send one Ancient Gear Golem from your hand, deck, or face-up monster zone to the graveyard. Immediately after this effect resolves, normal summon one Ancient Gear monster. If you normal or special summon Ancient Gear Golem, you can special summon one Ancient Gear Golem from your hand or graveyard, ignoring its summoning conditions. You can banish this card from your graveyard, place one Ancient Gear continuous trap from your hand face up to your field. You can only use each effective commander once per turn, and that's why we play this trap card, being able to dump it to the graveyard off of the fusion spell, and then being able to banish it in order to place the trap card allows our Ancient Gear Golems or anything that mentions it to be unaffected by activated monster effects. Now, unfortunately, the Chaos Giant or the Gear Giant doesn't mention Ancient Gear Golem, but Ultimate Ancient Gear Golem, which mentions it, so we do have targets. It's just the fact that they aren't necessarily the best best for going first. So we're going to end up using the commander here, as we're then going to be able to place the Ancient Gear Duel in the spell and trap zone. Now, for this next combo, we have Super Heavy Samurai Waka, and if you haven't noticed, this is a machine deck. Going to end up getting the Benkai, as we're going to special summon out the Waka, use the effect of the Benkai, as we'll then be able to get ourselves the booster. From here, we can then use the booster in order to get access into 2 level 4s, and because they're both level 4 machines, we can end up going into the X. Now, what's really cool about this is that we can use the X in order to search ourselves the Wyvern, and just like the previous combo, now we have access into the Wyvern combo, except that we have the extra body on board with the gear. So we'll be able to go into the Ballista now, use the effect of Ballista in order to search ourselves a Gear Town. And this is another really cool thing about this, that the advance can get ourselves the Catapult, and the Catapult only says if we control no face-up monsters, so it really doesn't matter for other face-up cards. And that means that we can end up tributing away the Ballista for the advance, get a draw, as we'll activate the Gear Town, use the Catapult, and this will give us the ability to pop the Gear Town, special summon out the Dark Golem, and now we can use the effect of the Gear Town along with the Dark Golem in order to get the searches along with a special summon. So we're going to get ourselves the box along with the Ancient Gear Fusion, pitch a card, as we'll then be able to special summon out our next new card, and this is Ancient Gear Tanker. It's a level 4 Earth that reads, if this card is normal or special summoned, you can special summon 1 Ancient Gear monster from your hand, except Tanker, ignoring its summoning conditions. Or, if your opponent controls a monster, you can special summon it from your graveyard instead. So that's just one of those other effects that matter if your opponent has a monster and they can help you go for OTKs just by getting that extra damage, but you can target 1 face-up card you control, destroy it, and if you do, for the rest of the turn, all monsters you control that are Ancient Gear Golem or mention it will gain 600 attack. You can only use each effective Tanker once per turn. Now, the cool thing about this is that we still have to resolve the Ancient Gear Golem as well as the box, or we have to resolve the box instead of the Ancient Gear Golem, but we'll then be able to get ourselves the Ancient Gear Frame, and we'll be able to special summon it out via the Ancient Gear Tanker, and this will make it so that we can use the effect of the frame, pitching the box so that we can get ourselves the Ancient Gear Duel, and from here we'll then be able to go into a rank 4, which will go into the Merrymaker. We'll then jump up into the Sargus, use the effect of Sargus, which will get ourselves into Regulus, giving us an Omni Negate. From here we can then attach or equip Gigant X to it, as we'll then activate the Ancient Gear Fusion, and in this case I'm just going to send 2 monsters for the Howitzer, as I think going first, this is your best option, just because it's unaffected by other card effects, and it's kind of like a mini towers with the 1800 defense, and it floats also, so that's really helpful. But we're going to continue here by using the effect of the Howitzer, getting the 1k damage, and from here we'll then be able to activate the commander, and just off the Super Heavy Samurai Waka, we're able to get ourselves this full board. Now, for this next combo, we just have Ancient Gear Advance with any other extra card that you can discard, as you'll notice that's a recurring theme because of the Ancient Gear Dark Golem needing to discard for the search. But we're going to activate the Catapult now, popping the advance. We'll then special summon out the Ancient Gear Dark Golem, as we'll use its effect, getting ourselves the box along with the Wyvern. And now there is the opportunity here that you can get yourself different searches if you have some of these combo pieces in hand already. But for the video, I'm just going to go all out for this one, and we're going to use the effect of box in order to get ourselves the commander. We'll then be able to normal summon the Wyvern, as we'll use the effect of the Wyvern, getting ourselves the Tanker. From here, we'll then be able to go into the Platinum Gadget, use the effect of the gadget, special summoning out the commander. Commander will then send the Golem, as we'll be able to get the extra normal summon for the Tanker. Tanker will then be able to get the box and field, as remember, this is something else that changes if we do have an opponent with a monster on field, but we're going to continue by going into the Ballista, use the effect of Ballista, getting ourselves the Gear Town. The reason we're doing this is because the Tanker can pop it. Ancient Gear Town, or the Gear Town, will be able to special summon out another Ancient Gear. We're going to continue here by bringing out the Gear Frame. From here we can then go into the Merrymaker, go into the Sargus, use the effect of Sargus in order to get ourselves the Regulus. We'll then be able to special summon out the Regulus, as we'll then be able to link away here into the SP Little Knight. And then we can pass out. For this next combo, we have Ancient Gear Frame along with any other card that you can discard. Helps you get into your combos by discarding a card, so just one of those things that you have to keep in mind, where you may start with a small hand size if you really have to commit to these combos because of Ancient Gear Dark Golem, Gear Frame, and stuff like that, which can can make this really a tough spot to recover from if you do get impermed and don't have anything else, so that's important to note. But we're going to get ourselves the catapult, use the advance in order to tribute off the gear frame, get a card, as we'll then be able to activate the catapult, special summon out the Ancient Gear Dark Golem, use the Dark Golem, get ourselves the searches, as we'll then be able to pitch a card. In this case, we're going to get the fusion along with the duel, and now we'll be able to stack our graveyard in order to get the Gear Giant, and then from here we can use the effect of Commander, placing the duel on field. Now, for this next combo, I wanted to show Ancient Gear Advance plus the Gear Town, just because we have instant access to our catapult, and being able to pop the Gear Town is just really good, as it's able to get you into your combos without having to commit to your normal summon, which is probably the best hands that the deck has. So we'll be able to bring out our Wyvern here, as we'll use the effect of the Gear Town as well. Use the Wyvern to search out the Commander. The Gear Town will end up getting ourselves the Dark Golem. We'll use the effect of the Dark Golem, which will be able to add ourselves the box along with the duel, as we'll pitch the Commander. We'll then be able to use the effect of box, getting ourselves the Gear Frame. We'll then be able to normal summon the Gear Frame, use the effect pitching the box, getting ourselves the Ancient Gear Fusion. So you'll see that now we have access into the Merrymaker, much like before. Go into the Sargus, use its effect in order to get ourselves the Regulus. From here we'll then be able to use the effect of advance in order to tribute it off so that we can get a draw. Use the effect of the Sargus, or use the effect of the Regulus so that we can equip the Sargus to it, activate the Ancient Gear Fusion. The ability to tribute off the Sargus was definitely optional and something that you don't have to do, but I just wanted to show that you could. As we're going to go into the Howitzer, you can go into something else if you're going second, or maybe if you want to just get a big body on board. But if you're going first, I think that the Howitzer is always the play, especially if you already have a stacked graveyard, just so that you don't keep wasting resources. But now we're going to use the effect of Commander, use the effect of the Howitzer, as we'll be able to burn for 1k and then pass on to our opponent. For the final combo, before I get onto the deck profile, I wanted to show a combo with the two new monster cards that aren't Ancient Gear Dark Golem, but we're going to start here by normal summoning the Commander, sending away the Gear, as we'll then be able to normal summon the Tanker, use the effect of the Tanker in order to special summon out the Wyvern, use the effect of Wyvern, getting ourselves the advance. From here we can then go into the X, and then we'll use the effect of X in order to add ourselves the Commander back to hand. Now keep in mind, I'm just getting the Commander back to hand because you can get anything that you want, but in this case, just because our options are kind of limited with the support that we have now, I think that going for the Commander is better and not running through your resources. But now we're going to link away into the Ballista, use the effect of the Ballista in order to get ourselves Gear Town, as we'll then be able to activate the advance, use the effect of advance for the catapult, then we'll be able to tribute the Ballista away with the advance. We'll get a draw, activate the Gear Town, we'll then be able to activate the catapult, then we'll be able to special summon out the Ancient Gear Golem, get the effect of the Gear Town along with the Golem. As we're going to add two cards here, we'll end up pitching the Commander since that's kind of the freest one here, as we'll then be able to special summon out the Ancient Gear Frame. We'll then be able to use the effect of box, get ourselves the copy of Ancient Gear Frame. From here we'll then be able to use the effect of Ancient Gear Frame, get ourselves the Ancient Gear Duel, and from here we'll then be able to activate the Ancient Gear Fusion. In this case I'm just going to fuse away the two monsters on board for the Howitzer. You can do whatever you want there, but we're then going to activate the Commander, get ourselves the Ancient Gear Duel on board, inflict 1k with the Howitzer, and with this I'll take you on to the deck profile. With all of the combos out of the way, there's two builds that I want to show off, the first one being the pure build. I think that the urgent schedules will become the 3 Ancient Gear statues when that thing is out. I have a picture of it somewhere on the screen if you don't know what it is, but for now it kind of is our best option, and it is a strictly going second card as we can't activate it if our opponent doesn't control more monsters than we do. Still being able to get into your level 5 or higher is kind of important, though it does hurt that they are negated. It also means that you have options to other rank 8s if you want to play them. To get to some of the things that I want to mention about the deck, we have the 3 copies of each of our most important cards here in my opinion, which are the advance, the catapult, which can either pop your advance or your Gear Town, your advance being able to tribute off your monsters so that you have no monsters on board to activate your catapult. And then of course you have your 2 tankers. I would play one, but at the same time in the pure build, I feel like you want that second one just to give you that extra extender, especially since we're missing cards to really get that extra body out there and help us play through hand traps and stuff. So assuming your opponent doesn't have something like an Imperm for this or Veiler, you're able to get that second body on board. You're just able to push through more than if you didn't see it, and that's why I have it at 2. The same thing goes with the Ancient Gear Dark Golem. You're usually special summoning it out from deck and maybe using 1 as fusion material off the Ancient Gear Fusion. So I think 2 is just fine. The 1 copy of Ancient Gear Duel, which is easily searchable. Same thing with the Commander. But the most important thing that I would like to go over are the other options that we have here. You'll see that there's more rank 4s and rank 8s that you can probably play. The Cleafort Genius is something cool that you can maybe do if you play the Waka engine along with maybe more heavy, super heavy samurai stuff that you can special summon out with in order to get your Regulus and stuff. I don't think that the deck needs to alternate its playstyle that way, as what it does is very efficient at it. Again, there will always be people trying to maximize the value that they can get off the cards in their deck and that like to really combo, so that's why I mentioned that. But then there's also the Vernasil stuff, and the reason why I didn't add this was just the space, though there is really cool things that you can do with this, like getting yourself the Earth statue and things like that, though it may lock yourself out of the Chaos Ancient Gear Giant or the Sargus. But I also would like to mention the fact that we do play the Nibiru. The Nibiru might seem counterintuitive when you consider the Catapult, but the really cool thing is how you can go into the Donner Dagger for hire, end up tributing it off for the pop, and then continue from there so that you have no bodies on board. It also clears the token if you have to. Then outside of that, there's the Ancient Gear Castle and the Ancient Gear Reborn. Just other options that you can technically play. I don't like them too much, which is why I stayed with them in the side deck. I just feel like they don't do enough on their own and really don't do anything on their own to warrant them being played, in my opinion. Even though the Ancient Gear Duel, you can kind of say the same thing, but just the fact that it's able to be an extra fusion card is really important, in my opinion. But with all of that out of the way, I'm just going to get onto the card by card for this one before I take you on to the next build. And we have the 3 Wyvern, the 3 Frame, the 3 copies of Catapult, the 3 copies of Advance, the 3 Urgent Schedule, the 2 Gear Town, the 2 Ancient Gear Fusion, the 2 Tankers, the 1 Commander, the 1 Box. We then have the 2 copies of Dark Golem, the 1 copy of Ancient Gear Golem, the 1 copy of Duel. We then have the 3 copies of Nibiru, the 3 copies of Gamma Seal, and this is another important card, especially for the beginning of the format where people really might be trying to spam out Colossus. So having an out to that when you're searching so much is really important. Same thing with the Droll and Lockbird. We then have the Effect Veiler. We then have the 2 copies of Howitzer in the extra deck. I think this is the most important Ancient Gear Fusion because it goes first and can technically go second if you just need something to kind of stall on. We then have the 1 copy of Megaton, the 1 copy of the Ultimate Ancient Gear Golem. We then have the 1 Gear Giant. We then have the X along with the Merrymaker, the Sargus, Donner. We then have the 1 copy of Mask, the 1 copy of SP Little Knight, Platinum Gadget, 2 copies of Ballista, which is very important, and then we have the 1 copy of Apo, round out the deck profile. This next build, I don't have any options here because everything that I really went through was in the first list, but you'll see that I do have the 1 copy of Tanker here over the 2, and it's just because I feel like this version of the build is much more explosive when you have the 3 Wakas. That said, it is a little bit bricky as well because you can end up opening your Benkai or either your booster along with Box and things like that, Ancient Gear Golem or Ancient Gear Catapult along with the Gear Towns not being the greatest draws. Same thing with the Ancient Gear Duel. And then there's other times that I would like to mention where 12 hand traps can still feel like kind of a lot, and you may have hands where you see like 2 or 3 hand traps and then you only have 2 cards to play with, maybe 3 depending on your hand. That said, going second can even feel rough that way because it means that even if you hand trap your opponent, or worst case scenario, your opponent is on Labyrinth and none of this stuff works, and it means that you're unlimited cards in order to play through boards, and that can make going second harder in itself, which can make going second cards like Harpy's Feather Duster, Lightning Storm, and things like that very important for the side deck. Another thing that you'll see here is the 2 copies of Gear Town and the 2 copies of Catapult instead of 3 and 3 like the pure build, and again, it's because once you have the Waka, which is extra access into the Ancient Gear Wyvern, and this is also why I think that the Ancient Gear statue is just so important to the deck, having that extra 3 of that you can play, that you can even special summon if your opponent controls a monster and help you play through interruptions that way is just really important in my opinion. But with all of that out of the way, I'm going to get onto the card by card, as this is just very similar to the first list. It's really just meant to turbo out your level 4 Ancient Gear Wyvern with the Waka engine so that you can get into your Ballista and continue to combo from there. But we have the 3 copies of Advance, the 3 copies of Wyvern, the 3 copies of Frame, the 3 copies of Waka, the 1 Benkei, the 1 copy of Booster, the 2 Ancient Gear Fusions, the Regulus. We then have the 1 copy of Commander, the 1 copy of Tanker, Box, Ancient Gear Golem, the 2 Dark Golems. We then have the 1 Ancient Gear Duel, the 2 copies of the Ancient Gear Catapult, the 2 copies of Gear Town, Seals. We then have the 3 copies of Droll, the 3 copies of Effect Veiler. We then have the 2 Howitzer in the extra deck, the 1 copy of the Megaton Golem, the 1 copy of the Ultimate Golem. We then have the 1 one Gear Giant, the one X, the one Merrymaker, the Sargus, Donner, Masquerena, SP Little Knight, Platinum Gadget, two Ballistas, along with the Appaloosa to round out the deck profile. So for everyone who's made it this far, I'd like to thank you for watching and for the 600 plus subscribers. I truly appreciate your support, and now that we've monetized the channel, giving us access to supers and memberships means that more awesome stuff is on the horizon. To get the channel membership, just click on the description below and there will be a link that takes you there. You'll also notice a free Discord link that I've made for us too. If you want to support me as a content creator, even if you can't donate supers or get a membership for the channel, clicking on those thumbs up and subscribe buttons help a lot too. For those wondering, I do plan on making updates to the channel as the support on the channel grows. Anyways, I hope to see you on the next one. It's Bones, signing out.